So, 23 plus years of leadership, and I've obviously been sitting under your teaching just recently, and I'm convinced you've learned a thing or two along the way.
Yes.
What would be the handful of Mark Griffiths messages, like Mark Griffiths lessons that you would just go back to time and time again and be saying, what, these are the benchmark leadership lessons, the benchmark ministry experiences that have shaped me and formed me, and I'd love to be able to share them with people. What would some of those be?
Yes, I think the main thing that I learned on the journey was I'm completely, utterly and totally dependent on God.
Yeah.
So every now and then I think I can do it. I have some gifts, I have some talents, I have some abilities, and sometimes I run at it with those particular things, and I usually end up bashing into brick walls. Mm-hmm. And I have to come back again and recognize that I am completely dependent on God. So the big lesson that I have learned and continue to learn is He is God and I am not. Mm. So every now and then I think that I am the omniscient one and I know all things. And I don't. I have to go back and say, God, how do I deal with this situation? Mm. Like all senior ministers, I have a tendency to believe that I'm omnipresent. Yeah. And I have a congregation that also believe that I'm omnipresent. They expect me to be in all places at all times. And I will die if I try and maintain that. And I run about. And a tendency to think that I am omnipotent, that I can do all things. I am the all-powerful one. And every now and then I like to stand in front of my congregations and say to them, I am fragile, wounded and broken, and I'm a sinner saved by grace. Mm. And every now and then I like to highlight the things that I have done wrong. So in arriving at this brand new job last October, the first thing I had to do was cut the lawn. And the vicarage which I now live in is in an acre of ground, and they gave me a lovely sit-on lawnmower to do that with. But I'd confused the words lawnmower with the words quad bike, and when I tried to race it around the garden and jump over a ditch with it, I successfully managed to break £3,000 worth of lawnmower in my first week of my new job.
There you go.
So I needed them to know how fallible their new minister was, and to recognize that their life with God is lived personally with God and not vicariously through me.
Mm. Mm. So important, isn't it? It's such a tension for leaders, especially the leaders that they've got vision, they've got enthusiasm, they've got energy. They want to see people involved and engaged, and it breaks their heart when they're not. Yes. But really, when it boils down to it, in Christian ministry and Christian leadership, we're under shepherds.
Absolutely.
To the great shepherd. So that's an amazing lesson to learn.
It's that wonderful tension. A sociologist called Chana Ullman said that the typical person is not converted by God, but converted by an individual. So they give their lives to the person who at the front is communicating Jesus. And it becomes the job of the communicator to then point that person to God.
Yeah, brilliant.
And the difficulty with some of our churches is the minister forgets to do that. And so all the attention is laid upon the minister. And his job is to move out of the way and allow people to personally encounter Jesus. Mm. And sometimes our ego is built up by the fact that everyone is dependent on us. Mm. So it's really quite tricky to move out of the way and say, no, your relationship is lived out with a personal encounter with Jesus, not a personal encounter with me. Mm. I will let you down consistently, and God will never let you down.
Absolutely. Yeah, brilliant. What else? What other sort of trademark or hallmark lessons along the way have you learned?
Well, they all compound together around that initial theme. I'm with my new congregation. I'm very keen that they understand that we're developing a culture, not a list of statements by which they live their lives. So I'm trying to build a culture in which all people are valued, all contributions are valued. I'm a firm believer in the priesthood of all believers. So it's not about the chap at the front. So we're all valued, and the job of leadership within that culture becomes a job of empowerment and equipping and ultimately releasing. It's really difficult to let go sometimes. And we, even over the last 4 months, have sent a dozen people off to go and be leaders in different places, and to bless them and to send them when you know that you're giving of your best is really rather difficult. But we've created a culture that makes that happen. So we want that to drive out from us. I lead the Church of St. Michael the Archangel, Warfield. When I arrived in the church, I was told by lots of people that what you do for the first year is you look at the ground, you see what's growing, you evaluate, you make very little changes. Yeah. And I genuinely arrived with that in mind. The difficulty was that the church itself wanted to grow, it wanted to move, it wanted to change. At its heart, it was passionate and militant. It's a wonderful story. The church itself started just over 1,000 years ago.
That's amazing.
It's in the middle of the Windsor Great Forest.
You just got to stop there for a minute. You're talking to an Australian, and for us, 200 years is old. So we get to sit in front of all these. So you're telling me that the building that you have church in is
1,000 years old.
1,000 years old.
It's built.
Okay.
It's built in the Windsor Great Forest, the place where the kings and queens of England used to hunt. And in the centre of this forest, they'd constructed some pagan worshippers had constructed their own little temple, and a Christian missionary came across this temple, and he broke it to pieces. He pushed away that pagan site, and on that pagan site, he built this place of worship to Jesus. And he said it was as if in building it that Michael the Archangel was doing war with the powers of darkness and had overcome them in that place. So I think I owe it to 1,000 years of history to lead a church in a militant way. A church which wants to overcome the powers of darkness in that area. Yeah. So I tried my best just to watch the ground and see what was growing. But the very DNA of the church wouldn't allow me to do it.
Brilliant.
It wanted to advance, it wanted to move forward. So we're seeing dozens of people coming to the church for the first time, dozens of people encountering Jesus, just because we've just gone with the DNA of the church.